Hello, welcome to another episode, you might call it, of watching me draw. Of course, right now you're watching me play guitar. Um, I hope you're doing well. Just checking to see if the quality of the stream is cooperating. Looks looks good so far. Leave me a comment or anything to um, let me know that things are looking and sounding good on your end before I get started drawing. Let's see. Thank you, Brian. I don't know if I can claim to be uh, the Bob Ross of this generation, but I sure enjoy getting to getting to chat with folks and getting to have the opportunities to um, share some things that I've been learning and about drawing, and hopefully encouraging other people to either pick up the digital artwork or some other similar passion. Um, let's see, where do we start? I've got a bunch of commissions in the drawing queue, um, and I've got more than enough work to keep me busy for hours. Um, so I'm just going to jump into drawing drawing one of those. So let's see. Go to my avatars folder. Gentleman named Steven ordered an avatar, sent me a couple of photos, and so I'm gonna get started on his first thing this morning, or afternoon, or evening, or wherever it is that you are. It is currently 10:30 a.m. My time, and let's see. As I normally do, I already skipped ahead. If I have a whole bunch of orders, what I normally do is just go through and kind of do a bulk update on all of them to crop the photos, import those into Procreate, set up the the projects for each one of these, so I have enough layers and all the yeah. So that's kind of like work that I do ahead of time when I know I'm going to be drawing a bunch of these, and so I'll try to set all those up. Um, so let's see here. I'm on the correct layer above the photo that I want to trace, and this is how I do what I do. There's no shame in tracing. All the one way or another, every artist traces, whether it's tracing over a an existing photo, or they're tracing over a sketch um, that they create themselves. There's lots and lots of ways that you kind of build upon um, a drawing in order to create something that looks good in the end. rarely, well, I don't know about rarely, but I mean, there are some artists who, you know, like caricature artists who can look at a person and draw a really good likeness just by looking. I'm not there. So this is what I do. I take a photo and I trace, but I trace loosely. I trace in ways that make it more cartoonish, not necessarily caricature, but I have a little bit of liberty with what do you call it when you're a poetic license, if you will. So I have a little bit of poetic license with the uh, the things that I draw. You know, based on the techniques and things that I've kind of learned, taught myself over the last few years. But tracing allows me to at least get the right proportions and dimensions of a person's face. Sometimes I'll, not agree with a photo and choose to go in a different direction. It just all depends. I usually start out with glasses and eyes first. And I'll draw a circle on another layer and kind of line that up with one of the eyes. And I'll duplicate that, move it over that way the size of the eyes are, proportional or the same. I'll merge those down and then I'll erase away the parts of the circle that I don't need. And I'll merge that down to that layer. Let's see, a little bit of eyebrow here. And sometimes I'll exaggerate the mouth. Yeah. Happy little trees, maybe a tiny rabbit. I don't know that I'm going to apply any happy trees or, maybe I don't know, maybe some happy teeth would be the equivalent for me. So this gentleman's got some nice hair going here, so I'm gonna pick up on that and exaggerate it a bit. Let's see how that looks. So that seems like a pretty good start. Again, if those of you who are watching on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch, if you have any questions along the way, if there's anything that I've done that maybe I just, you know, seemingly rushed through, or you didn't quite catch something that I did and you have a question about it, please post that. I'll be glad to answer or go back over what I did or reasons why I did it. So what I usually do is I'll create that line art on a layer that's pretty high up on the chain of layers, and then I'll go down to the very bottom layer and start working my way from bottom to top, filling in color and details. So layer one is what I usually where I usually put in the base skin tone. So I'll start there, and I can be pretty sloppy at times with putting down colors when I know that those colors will be covered up on top by a layer above it. So like I'm drawing into the hair area. I'm not worried about that because that'll get covered up when I draw the hair, when I color in the hair. So if you draw a closed shape in Procreate, you can click and drag, not click, tap and drag the color circle here in the corner, and it will fill in that color. And another tip is that if you choose a different color, let's say, you know, Steven here wanted to be some kind of cosplay character or something, I can drag another color on top of there and it will completely replace the color that's there. And then there's nice things like two finger tap is an undo, so I can reverse that change. Or if I do three finger tap, that is a redo. So two finger tap, undo, three, redo. So now I'll go up to the layer 2 above that and start to add in more color, base color. So white for the teeth, whites around the eyes, it's always good that people tell me what their eye color is, because most of the time I cannot tell from the photo. Like, you know, I could zoom in as much as I want, but I would not be able to tell that his eyes are blue. I'd say, maybe brown, and draw that, and then they'd be like, "What are you doing? Can't you see that my eyes are blue?" So that's why I always ask people when they order an avatar to tell me. Or at least tell me what eye color they identify with. So another thing that I do is I'll go to the layer right above the line art, and I'll add a reflection in the eye. And that's just a nice little detail that really makes the eyes a little bit more realistic, and you know, a little bit of a sparkle or something. I'm, you know, not sure what to call it. I don't have terms for all these things. These are just things that I've learned. So for the hair, I'm going to put down a layer of this kind of blonde color. And the reason I'm doing this is that I'm going to, he's got some red, reddish hue to his hair color. So instead of just trying to come up with that color I know that if I mix these two colors together, this kind of a blondish brown color, it turns red. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I have a layer here. I don't know if you can see that on the stream, but there's a little M here to the side, and that indicates that this is a layer that has been changed to multiply mode. So there's lots of different modes that you can set layers to: multiply, darken, color burn, linear burn. Most of these I never use, but multiply is one that I use a lot. And what happens is when I take that same shade of color and I draw on top of it, it multiplies together, and those two multiplied together turns into this reddish color, hair color that I really like, that I use for a lot of people who have reddish hair. And so what I'll do is I'll create that color, and then I'll tap and hold, and I get the little eyedropper tool with Procreate. You'll see that the color here in the corner has now changed to that color that I if you tap and hold, you can pick any color that's on the screen, right? And I could do that with his hair. Like I could tap and hold and try to find a color in his hair, but that almost never works like you would want it to. It's not, when with real photos, it's really hard to pick out a color, because there's lots and lots of colors actually, are values of colors that are in photos that your brain just kind of processes it all into one color, so to speak, of different shades, where in reality, if you were to zoom in really close, there's like lots and lots of different colors, and it's really hard to pick one that's representative of the whole thing. Anyway, probably more information than you needed to know, but I think it's interesting. So anyway, I'm going to erase this thing that I did here. I'm going to go back to my hair color layer, and I'm just going to drag and drop that that red color onto here. And maybe that's a little bit too red or too dark. I don't know. I can come in here and tweak it some and try that, and that turns it a little bit too orange, and that's definitely Tennessee orange hair. We don't want to do that, so maybe we'll just leave it like this. I think that's close enough. Clean up a little bit of stray stuff here. All right, so now I go to the next layer up, and this is where I start to add details around skin and shadows and different, I don't know a whole lot of drawing and art terms, but one that I've picked up on watching a few videos is a lot of artists refer to different shades of the same color as being values. So like a darker value or a lighter value. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that base color at the, I'm always putting down maybe the lightest color that I intend to have, and then I'll start to add darker values on top of the other layers. So I'll start by adding some contour to the face. Filling those in. And so sometimes, this is really contrast, or it's there's not enough contrast between the skin tone and the the hair. So I could come in here and change the opacity and lighten that up just a little bit, and that might um, create some contrast there that makes it look more like skin. And let's see. I'll go up to the next layer that's also set to multiply, and I'll add a gray that's like adding some shadow. And it's here that I will also typically start to add some detail around hair. So I use that multiply gray. And what I'm doing when I do some of these hair details is that normally when you're this type of brush that I have right now, it creates these kind of rounded shapes when I draw. Um, what I can do with Procreate is that if I just stop and hold, it snaps into what's called an auto shape, or a quick shape, or something like that. That's what Procreate calls it. And that gives me a sharper um, tip on those lines. So sometimes I use that, sometimes I don't. And then sometimes I might add one more additional multiply layer and just add just a tiny bit more depth to to the hair, just to give it another darker value or dimension there. One thing I noticed is I didn't get this sideburn too well. Now I will go, I have a layer here that's set to, um, it's called soft light. And this is where I'll add some highlights to like the skin and the hair. So with the soft light layer, I'll choose white as my color. And another way to do this is just to create a layer and lay down white wherever you want, and then change the opacity of that to match the effect that you want. But I found that soft light pretty is pretty much exactly what I want most of the time. So I'll just add some highlights to the skin. Now I'll come in here and add a few highlights to the hair, like the eyebrows. Not that there's a whole lot of highlights being uh, represented by the photos. This is just a detail, that's kind of become part of my style that I'll add these kind of highlights to, and I think it makes that those details stand out. I'll do the same thing with like the edges of the hair like that, and I'll add some highlights to the top. Like so. And then sometimes I will go to a layer above the line art, and I'll add some highlights to the glasses. Just a really thin line to help those glasses stand out. Because sometimes those lines get lost a little bit in the among everything else. And maybe I'll back the opacity of those highlights down a little bit, so there's just a little bit of a reflection. I think that helps. Probably, these are probably details that, for the most part, when a drawing like this is typically used as an avatar for like an application, say a person's using this for Twitter or for Slack or Zoom or whatever. A lot of these details may just completely disappear because nobody's looking at a high resolution version. But I still think even when it's really small, these details, especially the highlights on the skin, help to define that picture. What I found early on when I was drawing a lot of people, when I first started drawing avatars for people, is that it might look great when it's all big like this and I'm drawing on it, but as soon as it shrinks down to like an icon size that may be in somebody's using for their application, it's it might, some of the details kind of disappeared. You couldn't really tell it was the same person. Some of the likenesses disappeared, and so by adding these details, even though some of them are lost, it still helps a good deal. Let's see. Last thing is to go to the very top layer, change my brush to just a regular brush. And add my ReverentGeek signature. All right, done with this one. Share. I'll save that. A few folks are on the stream. Let's see, we got a question here. Really enjoy the style. I've tried my hand at this. Mine always look too flat. I really like the use of multiply. Yep. Same here. Like when I started a couple of years ago, yeah, a lot of my drawings turned out really flat. And adding more contrast, it didn't feel like when I was starting, it didn't feel right to add a whole lot of contrast. But as I learned these techniques, or learned what worked and what didn't work, is that stronger contrast created, you know, a better result when, especially when an image becomes really small. Like this person's drawing here, you may notice that the outline of the drawing is a really thick black line. So if I pull this up, you can see that this is really dark around the edges. You know, really a really thick black line. And if you're thinking like, I want to be realistic or something like that, that you wouldn't do that. But when you shrink this down, it now helps that image to pop from the background. Gives it a little more depth. These are just things that I've picked up over time that hopefully work. I will I'll drink some coffee before I move on to the next drawing. Any other questions before I jump into the next drawing? All right. Well, I've got a pretty big order here that I'm working on for a company who has ordered avatars for their employees, and this is this is kind of the beginning of this order. There's a lot of them. So I'm going to jump in and I'm going to tackle the hardest one first. And the reason this is the hardest one, in my opinion, is that the quality of the photo is not great. Like the original size of this image, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but I mean it's pretty blurry. And so this is one where I'm going to have to really, I don't know, I'm guessing, right, as to some of the details of the facial features. I can kind of see it, you know, in the reference photo, but you know, higher the quality of the photo, the makes my life a little bit easier. But I'm going to tackle this one live on camera, so you can see if I do a good job or not. And usually, as I usually do, I'll start with the eyes. And man, as I get closer and closer, the eyes are like, a lot of the detail is lost. But I'm going to approximate what I'm seeing, and then I'll kind of compare that to the original image. Like, I don't know, it's not quite lining up right. So I'll use the selection tool and then kind of move this around, make it look more like it's in the right spot. That looks like it might be in the right spot now. And then a lot of times I don't, I'm not seeing that detail in in the photos, but there's probably a little bit of eyelid um, there that you know is going to look fine. Might a lot of times when I'm drawing eyes, I will exaggerate maybe a little bit larger. Again, this is something I've learned over time, just so that when these images are shrunk down to however they might be used, that the eyes still really show instead of get lost in the details. Whoops. I'll merge these two together, erase away the parts I don't need. Merge that down. And something I've talked about before is when I'm doing eyes, I'll make these kind of like a triangle shape that's connected to the top of the eye. For whatever reason, I've just found that this works. It's not, the natural inclination is to make a perfect circle in the very center of the iris, just as it appears in real life. But I've found that it actually looks better, you know, from a cartoonish perspective to make it kind of triangular and attached to the top. Otherwise, if it's floating in the center, it doesn't always look natural. Like our brains are so good at noticing details, even if we don't realize what the problem is. We see that it's a problem. Our brains are like, man, there's something off about that face or those eyes. Can't quite put my finger on it. Like if you showed a picture to someone, they would say, "Oh, I don't know what's wrong with that, but something's wrong." It's a lot of times it may be the eyes because our brains pick up on things that. And again, these triangles that I create somehow blur that. It's kind of an optical illusion or plays a trick with the mind or something. I don't know. I don't know. I can't explain it, but I just know that and a lot of times it works. Hey, Christian, glad you could join the stream on YouTube. Good to see you. All right, moving on. So I've got that. Let's try to add some detail around the ears. And again, I'm just kind of going on experience as to, because I don't have a whole lot of real detail from the photo to work with. And I've learned that if you're going to make a mistake, it's better to err on the side of um, skinnier rather than wider when it comes to facial features. Because if you draw too, it's like the tendency is you want to, if you're tracing like I do, as I've explained, no shame in tracing. That the tendency is you want to draw right on top of that outer edge of the face or whatever the features are that you're drawing on, and it's actually better to draw right on the inside of that, like just that subtle change right there. I probably went too far outwards, and now if that person looks at that this drawing of themselves, they may think, well, you made me look, fat or fatter than, my face is too wide or something like that. So I try to be, as much as I can, stay within the inside and make things look skinnier. Most people appreciate looking more skinny. Maybe I'll just darken that up some more. Oh, maybe that works. We'll see. And let's go down to this bottom layer. Start adding some color. All right, so what brush do I use? Um, I used to use just the standard brushes that come with Procreate. You can play around with the there's a setting called Streamline. So right now I have Streamline on this particular brush all the way to the max. And what Streamline does is it smooths out your strokes. So if I were to take Streamline completely off, then it would draw everything exactly the way that I draw it. But Streamline turned on smooths out those curves. And I like that. It creates a more, I can, allows me to draw a little bit more loosely. Specifically, the brush though is one that I bought from uh, BJ Dell. So you can read that. He's a guy who draws and puts videos out on YouTube. I think I bought a brush pack from him for like $5, something like that. He does a lot of cartoons, cartoon characters, animals, and I really like his style. And I liked, when I watched him draw, I liked what he was doing with the brushes that he had. I thought that looks really close to like what I do, and so I tried out his brushes, and I've stuck with them ever since. So, I mean, I use different brushes for different things, but the the Streamline and Standard Inkers by BJ Dale are ones that I use a lot in my avatars. Sometimes I'll use this light dry brush that I picked up somewhere else to add detail to hair, facial hair specifically, which I'll show in a moment because he's got some facial hair. And let's see, for other types of drawings, not avatars, I might use a round brush, and then I've got a whole bunch of brushes that you know, I keep buying brushes and never using them, but I load them into Procreate. I play around with them for a minute, and then I kind of give up. But these are the ones that I stick to when drawing avatars. Let's see. All right, I'm on my skin tone layer. Then I'll go up a layer and start adding some details. I'll fill in the eye with a kind of a lighter brown, and then come back and fill a little bit more in with a darker brown. And then I will go to layer above my line art, that black lines, and I'll add a little bit of reflection on the eyes. Let's see, I'll take that lighter shade of brown and do some hair and eyebrows. So I'm just creating an empty shape that follows along the hairline, and then I'll fill everything in all at once. So it saves me a lot of time. Back when I first started, when I hand drew avatars for people, I spent a lot of painstaking time literally drawing in everything and not taking advantage of tools like that where you can just fill in a space. So I'm thinking this brown might actually be a little too dark for this person. So I'm going to go with a more sandy brown and put that, replace these colors with, I don't know, that doesn't look right either. Let me go back to brown and just lighten it up. No, that's too orange. Where's my brown? That's better. And then gonna add a layer here, and I'm gonna add that same color brown for the facial hair. Oh, gotta close those shapes in. And sometimes I might tweak that layer, like lighten it up a little bit. And what I'll do is I'll create another layer on top of this. And here's a cool technique in Procreate. There's this concept that if you tap on a layer, you get, a bunch of options off to the side here things like rename, select, copy, fill layer. These are really powerful features that I don't take advantage of nearly enough. But one thing I like being able to do is this one option called clipping mask. When I tap on clipping mask, this layer has a little arrow that points down to the layer below it. And now what happens is if I draw anywhere outside um, the that drawing, it's not going to register. I need to see the it only it only registers over the layer that's of color that's underneath it. So what I'll do is I'll take my light dry brush that I use for hair detail, and I'll just come in here and add some strokes. And I know, this is just adding texture for that beard for the hair. And I know that I don't have to worry about staying within the lines because it's all going to get clipped to the color that's there. All right. So moving on to the multiply layer, change my brush back to that bold inker streamline. And one of the reasons why I chose for this particular person's facial hair to be a little change the opacity is so that the shape of the face would kind of show through. So starting to shape up. And next I will do another multiply layer and use gray and start to add some shadow. Just adds more depth. Then I'll also add some more detail for the eyebrows and the hair. I'll use a darker gray. I'm going to go back to this skin layer and add just a little bit more. On this side. Maybe raise that cheek up just a little bit. Helps to get a different perspective sometimes, you know, and zoom in and out, try to compare to the original photo. And then I've got my soft light layer where I'll come in with a white. I'll add some little details to hair. And pretty much done. You know, I might play around with some of the colors some, just maybe lighten up that base skin tone a little bit with the using opacity. And then sign it. And I might see some details where maybe I got a little sloppy or, you know, needs to be cleaned up a little bit. A little bit better. All right, I'm going to say this is close enough. You know, I honestly, with the, like I said from the beginning, this is such a more difficult drawing to do because of the quality of the photo is not as good as I would like for it to be. So who knows? Maybe you know, I might end up having to redo this drawing completely based on a better photo. It happens sometimes. I want to make sure people are happy with the drawings that I create as much as possible. You know, can't always make everyone happy, but I'll try. So that brings it up to about an hour worth of drawing. Before I close things off, is there any other questions, things that I could answer for anyone? Maybe some encouragement, maybe some more guitar picking before we go. Let's see. A little more coffee before we go. Let's see. I keep saying that. The use of paper like screen protector. Yes, the paper like brand, not the ones that claim to be paper like that are on Amazon, but the actual one that's called paper like that had a Kickstarter last year or a couple of years ago. I really do like that screen protector. It gives the screen just a little bit of texture, and the version 2 that they came out with is much better than version 1. Version 1 kind of muted the colors, as do a lot of the other screen protectors that I've tried. It tends to dull the screen some, whereas the paper-like version 2, the texture is better, the colors are better. It feels really good. Highly recommend spending the extra cost of the true paper like. It's well worth it. Well, folks, I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope this was, entertaining or educational for you. Glad to share drawings and whatever else and answer any questions that you have. I will probably, if things go hopefully like I expect them to, I'll be able to stream again later this week, maybe on Thursday around the same time. Uh, Thank you for Jonathan for being a part of today's stream, asking questions, and glad to help you and answer any other questions you have. I'm available Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitter. On Twitter, my direct messages are open. So if you want to ask me a question anytime, you can. I hope you have a blessed day. I hope you have. Hope you're staying safe. You're doing well, and I will see you again on the next stream soon.